Hi, this is Sean Gaylord, and this is episode 2 of the album that changed my life. This is my love letter to music. This is my love letter to those albums that have inspired me, uplifted me, and helped me through good times and bad times. I know that for those of you that are tuning in, that you probably have some sort of connection to an album, whether it's evocative of a memory, whether it gets you to feel a certain way, whether it is part of that life soundtrack that connects all of us. On episode 1 of this podcast, I talked about an album that changed everything for me when I first heard it in 1984. It's the 1966 album East West by the Butterfield Blues Band. And this is the Sundazed edition of this great classic album where Chicago blues went to a different level and where the band embraced elements of jazz and blues and rock and soul and rhythm and blues and even India raga. Now, if you take a look at the album is most famous for the title track East West, which is a 13-minute free-form exploration where guitarist Mike Bloomfield leads the band through Indian music, and you have elements of raga and jazz in it. And again, it changed everything for me. If you look closely at the album on side 2 of the album, it begins. I'm not sure if you can see it here if you're viewing the video version of this podcast. The song Mary, Mary. Mary, Mary, not to be confused with the great Run DMC song, but actually Run DMC and the Paul Butterfield Blues Band were covering a Monkee song that was found on this 1967 album, More of the Monkees. And this is the second album from the band featuring Michael Nesmith, Peter Tork, Davy Jones, and Mickey Dolenz. Most of you, depending on what generation of a fan are you and depending on your age demographic, you grew up with the Monkees, watching them probably on, maybe you watched them when they originally aired on NBC, or if you were like me, as a young child of the 70s, I remember watching the Monkees every Saturday morning and being blown away by the music, the hijinks, the comedy, the zaniness, the talking to the camera. I loved all of those elements of the Monkee show. And some of those hijinks and some of those comedic bits still stay with me, and I have passed them on to my 3 daughters as well. Well, I not only became a fan of the TV series, but I became a fan of the music. And if you have a copy of More of the Monkees, you might notice on side 1, as I'm taking a peek here, making sure what track it is, track 2 of More of the Monkees is a song called Mary, Mary, written by Michael Nesmith. Well, the Paul Butterfield Blues Band on the album that changed my life covered Mary, Mary. And it's just a great, funky blues kind of groove. On the studio version that the Monkees recorded, it features Mickey Dolenz on vocals, and it also features members of the Wrecking Crew providing instrumental backing. In fact, the lead guitar is played by none other than Glenn Campbell. You may know Glenn. Perhaps you know that little song, that little ditty he did, the Wichita Lineman, or maybe Rhinestone Cowboy, or By the Time I Get to Phoenix. Well, before he began that venture with the great composer Jimmy Webb, Glenn Campbell was a studio cat. He was a studio guitarist. He was a guitarist for hire, and he played with other members of the Wrecking Crew, this kind of hollowed group of Los Angeles studio musicians who played on all kinds of pop and rock and adult contemporary. They played with everybody from Elvis to Sinatra, Sonny and Cher, all of the Phil Spector Wall of Sound. Well, they also played on a lot of the Monkee songs, specifically on their first 2 albums. Now, upon first blush, Doesn't sound like a problem. You've got a successful TV series that's about this um, struggling rock band living in a beach house. And you've got this great music that is serving as the early prototypes, if you will, for MTV music videos when MTV actually played videos. And you have these kind of great pop songs coming from New York, the Brill Building. You know, I'm talking about Goffin and King, Neil Diamond, Boyce and Hart, all of these, Neil Sedaka, all of these great songwriters creating great stellar pop music, songs like Last Train to Clarksville, I'm a Believer. And not only did the music help promote the show, but the music kind of sold as well. And the Monkees had a couple of #1 hits with the aforementioned songs, Last Train to Clarksville and I'm a Believer. Well, then that kind of monkey mania led to, well, let's see what we do if we take these four actors, and two of these actors who were before the TV show were professional musicians, and let's put them on the road. Now, you have four different actors, four different individuals with four different varying musical styles and backgrounds. Davy Jones had a Broadway background, and in fact, he played the Artful Dodger in the original Broadway cast of Oliver. Mickey Dolenz, who played the drummer, he wasn't a drummer. Mickey Dolenz was actually an actor and and then also sang in R&B bands and rock bands in Los Angeles. And he was primarily a guitarist. Well, he had to learn the drums real quickly. Peter Tork, an accomplished classical musician and folk musician, was a multi-instrumentalist. He played bass. And then Mike Nesmith, who had that Texan R&B, country and Western background, played guitar. So all of them had to learn kind of how to be a band very quickly, because then they went out on the road and toured very successfully. Again, upon first blush, kind of sounds like a cool deal. Successful actors playing musicians, selling millions of records, performing. Well, somewhere along the way in this success and mania, Mike Nesmith began to have a little bit of a problem with this, because they were now being successful. He was a musician. His musician heart was probably torn asunder, along with Peter Tork's, because now they were getting kind of criticism from friends and critics and other musicians, because they did not play as a band on their first two albums. And this led to all kinds of internal struggle and corporate battles. And to make a very long story short, the Monkees decided that they wanted to have some control and say over their music. If they're going to lay down the vocals, they wanted to have some say over producers and arrangements and songwriting. And again, you had a very good kind of corporate groove of a machine going, led by Don Kirshner, who was the music supervisor for the first two Monkee albums. And he had a kind of a template and a formula. Some battles and conflicts led between Kirshner and the band. And ultimately, the Monkees won out, and they won the ability or the authority to write, produce, and record their own music as a band, as Mickey Dolenz liked to mention in his in interviews and commentary on this transformation. Pinocchio became a boy. Spock became a Vulcan. The Monkees became, started off as this television show of actors. They then took on the role of a band. And again, it's easier said than done, and they were able to pull it together as a band and record an incredible album under the direction and production of Chip Douglas. bassist from the Turtles and the modern folk quartet. In fact, Chip Douglas, kind of his big claim to fame was during his brief stint in the Monkees, the Turtles, all these animal bands. When Chip Douglas was in the Turtles, played bass, and he also did the arrangement for their big hit, Happy Together. And he was later drafted by Michael Nesmith away from the Turtles to become the Monkees producer. And he was the one that kind of had to pull these 4 different musical styles and elements together to make what is now known as the album, one of the albums that changed my life, Headquarters. And I have, as I'm reaching here, several copies of Headquarters. Here is the Rhino reissue, which came out in 1986, and just a great version here. I love the sound on this particular disc. But then I've got multiple. Here's one. Again, I'm an unabashed fan. Here's Monkees. Here's the Headquarters Monkees album on Sundays. Here is an original mono used version that I tracked down. Here is a Rhino Friday Music version. And then here is, in honor of the 45th anniversary of the Monkees recording of Headquarters, here is a Stacko Tracks version of which is all the instrumental backings of the Headquarters album. So you can hear how tight the Monkees were as a band. And as I think about Headquarters, some of the songs, and again, if you're tuning in and if you're familiar with the show The Monkees, you probably are familiar with the song For Pete's Sake, which was the closing theme. It's the song that read over the credits during the second season and was co-written by Peter Tork. But there are some great tracks on here. It opens with the great album opener, You Told Me, written by Michael Nesmith, featuring Peter Tork on banjo. You've got some Boyce and Hart songs, Boyce and Hart, who wrote Last Train to Clarksville. You've got songs like I'll Spend My Life With You, Mr. Webster. You also have the prototype for what many consider to be one of the first rap songs, a song called Zilch, which is absolutely amazing. You have the classic 2-minute shimmering pop song written by Michael Nesmith, You Just May Be the One. The Rubber Soul influenced song on here, Shades of Gray. It really is a great album. It's a great garage rock album, and you've got kind of that garage rock feel, the chunky rhythm guitar of Mike Nesmith, the stellar drumming of Mickey Dolenz. And I will say, Mickey Dolenz is underrated as a drummer. For somebody who had to take a very quick crash course in learning how to play the drums. Great vocals, great harmonies, great arrangements. And of course, speaking of Mickey Dolenz, you have one of the best album closers, in my estimation, a song called Randy Scouse Git, which I had the great fortune of talking to Mickey Dolenz about Randy Scouse Git when I met him briefly last fall at the Fab Fest in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I was talking about my book, The Pepper Effect, and Mickey Dolenz was the headliner, and he did a quick meet or greet. Well, I was able to meet and greet Mickey Dolenz, and I had that moment, kind of like the old Saturday Night Live skit. In fact, I'm having that moment now, where Chris Farley is talking to Paul McCartney, and during the meet and greet, I was a babbling mess. Well, I brought my copy of an EP featured here, and you can see Mickey Dolenz's signature. And you'll notice it's got the album cover shoot from Headquarters and a song called Alternate Title, backed with words, and Pleasant Valley Sunday, which those songs appear on the follow-up album, Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, and Jones Limited album, which is another great album. And then the song written by Chip Douglas, the producer for Headquarters, Forget That Girl. Alternate Title is actually the alternate title for Randy Scouse Git. And at the time, Randy Scouse Git written by Mickey Dolenz about his a trip to London he took, and he talks about meeting his first wife. There's an allusion to that, and an allusion to meeting the four kings of EMI, the Beatles. They were going to put it out as a single, and they told him that he had to change the title because in certain circles in England, Randy Scousket is not a pleasant term to say to someone. And they said he had to come up with an alternate title. Well, I mean, his nose at authority, as the Monkees did, he called it alternate title. And I had the great opportunity to meet Mickey and to have him sign this EP here. And in the midst of that meet and greet, I wanted to tell him, and I missed the opportunity to do this because there's a line and you want to honor people's time and they don't want you spending too much time. But I wanted to tell Mickey Dolenz that Headquarters is an album that changed my life. It's an album that still inspires me, uplifts me, and motivates me. And I know that the Monkees get a bad rap. They're not seen by some as being an authentic contributor to the canon of rock and pop music, but I definitely believe that the Monkees are that, or were and are those authentic contributors to the canon of music. And when you take an album like Headquarters, and when you think about the story behind the creation of this album and how these four individuals took an incredibly risky, giant step, kind of a nod there to Take a Giant Step by the Monkees, another great song from Carole King and Jerry Goffin. But when they took this giant step to, in essence, become a band and risk all kinds of critical rancor, to risk all kinds of corporate financial gain. I mean, these were folks that were just kind of thrown together very quickly through the TV show. They hadn't had time to gig regularly and to hone their sound as any band would, but they were able to do it. I believe it was in like a 6-week period where they came together and took what I call creative courage, creative collaborative courage, to make an artistic statement, to make a musical statement on their own, independently, without breaking free of a very lucrative corporate financial situation, and to make just a charming album. And so as someone who is a school leader, someone who has been through organizational changes or leading organizational changes, I put on Headquarters as that inspiration to say to myself that we can make the world a better place when we take risks. We can definitely do the great and hard things when we come together as a band, doing something in the spirit of creativity, doing something in the spirit of independence, doing something in the spirit of creative and innovative expression. And Headquarters is that album that has changed my life and has given me that inspiration and that spark to do great things as a leader, as a writer, as a podcaster, etc. And I hope that album does the same for you. I highly recommend that you check out Headquarters in whatever way, shape, or form. Just recently, it has come out through Rhino Records as a 4 CD box set, which I'm holding here, which has a remix of the album, thanks to Andrew Sandoval, who is probably the premier expert on all things Monkees, and has had a hand in reunion tours and reissues. And it is a beautifully wrought package as well, which comes with 4 CDs. And you also not only have the remix of the album, but you have what was going to be the third album that was going to be under the production of John Kirshner and Don Kirshner in here. So check this out as well. It's a beautiful package. Great little bonus 45 here of what would have been a great single, the single that never was, featuring all 4 Monkees writing and singing and playing together. The Girl I Knew Somewhere, Nesmith, just sublime song, and All of Your Toys, written by Bill Martin. Two great songs from the Headquarters era. I really recommend this box set. Also, Mickey Dolenz is touring. He is the surviving member of the Monkees, and he is touring in celebration of the Headquarters album. And I wish he would come to North Carolina. But if he's in a town near you, please be sure to check it out. I highly recommend that you check out Headquarters and or check out any album that changed your life. And I would love to get into any conversation and discussion with you. Music is that connecting force, and music is that element that changes our lives. It's part of our life soundtrack. And for me, albums like the Butterfield Blues Band's East West and Headquarters are those albums that fuel and inspire me. And I bet that there are albums that fuel and inspire you. So I'd love to hear about them. You're welcome to connect with me on Twitter or Instagram at SM Gaylord. This is the album that changed my life, and episode 2 is officially a wrap, and I look forward to catching you on the flip side. Thanks for tuning in, and thank you to the creative legacy, the creative courage of the Monkees, Davy Jones, Michael Nesmith, Peter Tork, and Mickey Dolenz. Thank you for the gem of an album, actually a very successful album, Headquarters. Thank you so much. And thanks again for tuning in to the album that changed my life. This is Sean Gaylord.